Hello, I'm Soul, and this is a video for those of you who are on the sidelines watching from the outside. Is now a good time to get into World of Warcraft Dragonflight? It's on sale right now, so there's that, but it's probably not a good enough reason. What I'm going to do today is sort of describe what the Dragonflight experience is like, spoiler free, in as objective of a perspective as I can get away with, which I know as a content creator for World of Warcraft that's not really possible, but let's give it a go. Hit the like button, subscribe for more WoW content, and let's start by creating a pretend profile of you, the viewer. Let's say that you've never played Dragonflight. Like, you know nothing beyond, I guess, a few Wowhead articles here and there, but you still don't quite understand how it all comes together. As a returning player, or even a new one, creating a character in World of Warcraft hasn't changed much. The bones are still there, albeit with a lot more available race and class combinations, and a new class, the Evoker. You're funneled into the Battle for Azeroth leveling experience if you're on a new Battle.net account. Evokers are a hero class and are Dragon Isles ready, but for others you still choose your expansion through Chromie Time. It's a way to pick an expansion era and level off of a few zones until you're ready to venture to the Dragon Isles. There is a twist though. In fact, it's one that extends from leveling to endgame, and that twist comes in the form of talent trees and talent points. The feel of leveling up has gone back to older, perhaps better times, where leveling up will have you kind of stop for a second or three to spend a talent point. There are two kinds of trees. There's a class and a specialization tree, and each time you level, you get a point to drop into one tree or the other. So one person's experience isn't going to be quite the same as the others, depending on the build that you want to explore. What's really cool is that you can change your talents almost any time you want. There's no respec fees, there's no talent tomes, there's no having to go back to a rested area. And this shift towards talents is very big. In expansions past, playing with builds meant having to collect certain powers or gear that may have involved really long grinds. But with Dragonflight, it's going back to talents that you can immediately play with as soon as you level up and earn them talent points. All in all, leveling is what it's been. Sometimes it's kind of an impatient journey to get to where you really want to go, new stuff, and full control over your talents. Entering the Dragon Isles is as standard as a boat ride. In fact, it is a boat ride. You make landfall, you pick up quests, you go from point A to point B. There's nothing new. That formula hasn't changed. There are things that you start to notice. Some subtle, some are in your face. There's quite a few side quests available that'll get you exploring off the beaten path. And that's when one would realize that, well, these zones kind of have a lot of open space. In fact, the Dragon Isles is constructed in ways that WoW has not really done before, not at this scale. When you first start playing through, you're on the ground, making this scale unrealized. Thankfully, shortly into the main questline, you get your first dragon riding mount and the ability to fly. You know how some games have that long intro and you don't quite know that it's an intro the first time, but then suddenly, the title thing appears and it's like, whoa, okay, I guess now it's time to play the game. That's kind of what happens when you get this mount, because it's really liberating. And when you're up this high, you start to understand more what the WoW team did below. They created a world designed to be flown through with stupidly high peaks and massive distances. Previous expansions showed us the world from the ground for about a year or so, before we could sort of escape from it and survey what we had been through up until then. But Dragonflight marries the experience on the ground and in the air. Flying has become part of the gameplay again, with hard-to-reach places, endgame questing, and even arcade-style dragon racing. Okay, so that's why there are tons of side quests, far more than what we've seen since as far back as Warlords of Draenor, but there's also a complete leveling campaign that you do need to finish once, after which your ults can freely skip by just not doing it. Those who are familiar with Threads of Fate from Shadowlands and the Choose Your Zone experience from Battle for Azeroth is going to understand this. Alts who jump into Dragonflight will get to enjoy benefits as soon as they're unlocked. Finish the campaign once, and alts will see the campaigns on their map, but they don't have to do them. They'll also have immediate access to dragon riding and other features that I'll briefly mention a little bit later. For me, my alts only do professions, so it's great that I was able to just log in and go into the Dragon Isles via Portal Room and then just start working on professions. This new way of constructing the world and the free form of dragon riding is something that you might immediately take for granted. I mean, I did. I feel spoiled, and going back to the old world and swimming in the air only a third as fast, it feels really dated. I can't see WoW going backwards from this. The opportunities to fly around, to explore, and cover huge distances in seconds, and feeling this epic landscape, it set a new standard for WoW. That is not an opinion. I'm gonna stand by that. Professions also had a very big revamp, which is a pro and a con. Personally, I do like what they're trying to do with creating profession specializations, so you can focus on what you think is good for you or is profitable or both, and the multiple qualities and quantities of items that can be made. But while it might have been necessary, lots of players just weren't ready for such sweeping changes, and rightfully, a lot of them were confused. They ended up making poor decisions, lost investments, and did not feel very good about it. But newer players like yourself, who are jumping in, have a whole lot of cushion. Getting into professions is going to be pretty easy because at the moment materials are way cheaper and there's plenty of knowledgeable players ready to answer questions. You just need to be careful once you start specializing though. Specializing means venturing deep into skill trees with synergies and combinations that'll let you make the best stuff at the lowest price, and it doesn't take long to master a specific path, like if you want the fantasy of creating a powerful one-handed sword for yourself, but it's going to take months to fully master all of these trees. That means in the context of wanting to be as good of a crafter as, the next person who has been playing since the expansion's launch, you're behind. But given that you're not playing Dragonflight yet anyway, that's probably not your number one priority. My tip is to at least try out the gathering professions. It's been a ton of fun for me between developing myself to be an efficient gatherer who can pick herbs and mine while mounted, that's pretty awesome, and coupled with dragon riding, it's been lots of fun sort of like leaping from one node to the next. Reaching Endgame the first time can feel really overwhelming, especially now, a few months later when all those pesky time gates are done and over with because, that was a thing, and now it's coming at you all at once. And I'm talking about Raid Finder difficulty fully opening up, and Valor and Conquest points being uncapped, and for those who are familiar with this, the Catalyst, which is a way to turn endgame gear into tier set pieces, that's open for business now too. Top-end crafted gear was carefully paced at the start of the season. Now, if you happen to have a bit of time and gold, you can just make yourself some epics pretty easily. What the WoW team is trying to do is still have final say on how Endgame's seasonal features open up and loosen the restrictions, but the accessibility to outdoor content and those related features, it's not waiting until the expansion's second patch, it's now. And while it's not perfect, it's pretty friendly for new players like yourself and alts as well. But let's keep talking about max level content. We've got the raid, there's 8 bosses of pain right now with a layout that lets you sort of choose the order of a few bosses, and the raid is pretty good. Here's a mixed sample of the plate gear that you can pick up, and there are unique tier set appearances and bonuses for every class. PvP is PvP, but added in Dragonflight is the long-awaited solo shuffle. Someone once said, you think you do, but you don't, and lots of people are enjoying rated solo queue, but at the same time, there are lots of complaints over, guess what? People leaving. Oh no, huge surprise. Over in Mythic Plus World, the WoW team is trying something pretty different with 4 Dragonflight dungeons and 4 older dungeons being part of this Mythic Plus rotation. In this case, we're getting Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, Court of Stars, Temple of the Jade Serpent, and Halls of Valor. If those dungeons were your jam, hey, give them a shot, try them out this season while they're active because, well, it's all going to change in Season 2 to keep things fresh. Also, the Inspiring and Necrotic Fixers are gone? Maybe I should have let off with that. Closely related to Endgame are the states of classes, which you're going to get different takes from different people because, one spec or class is going to be great here, but not there. But it hasn't been hard to notice that the WoW team has been extremely aggressive with class and spec balancing, at least way more aggressive than in previous expansions. Like as of this recording, Retribution Paladins are getting a substantial overhaul and we're only midway through the first season. It's a huge shift from Shadowlands, where they were very skittish about making any significant changes because of our locking into Covenant choices and what legendaries that we invested into and had crafted. I think the changes that we see every few weeks are a reflection of that freedom for the developers, and it's that much easier for us to get alts up and running. Or maybe it's just our mindset shifting, and WoW should have a regular cadence of balancing like this. I can't speak about evokers from experience, but I'll say with confidence that jumping into Dragonflight as an evoker is going to feel like a different game altogether, with how differently everything feels on top of there being a new class to try out. And now let's talk about the day-to-day grind of Dragonflight. What's the reality of Dragonflight Endgame? I'm going to draw a distinction between what is max level content and progression content like raiding, rated PvP, and Mythic Plus content, because those gameplay features, which I affectionately call the big three, for the most part can be a separate game mode altogether. Once you enter that realm of Endgame, you can pretty much stay in the big three, or you can exclusively do PvP, exclusively raid, or just do dungeons. The only things that you need to really reach out for that you can't obtain from that content directly would be enchants and consumables. Naturally, players will cross from one game mode to another to gear faster or to min-max, and there's always going to be debate on which is the better thing to do overall, but the days of having to take a detour, like running Torghast or repping up with a certain faction, it's not a thing in Dragonflight. World content is where you're going to find familiar loops and a lot of new experiments. Once you complete the leveling campaign and hit level 70, there's a ton of directions that you can go, and it can feel pretty overwhelming. I like to describe this as living in the world of the Dragon Isles, where you can choose to focus on a certain something, and then it turns into a short series of activities that you can digest into as little or as much as you like. Like, for example, reputations. You can zip around the Dragon Isles, knocking out side quests and world quests and other activities related to a particular faction. There are dailies for decently sized rewards, and then there are grinds that you can commit to for hours and hours and hours if you want to go the extra mile. But the WoW team tried to add variety for what these no-life grinds entail. The one that feels the most organic to me would be the Maruk Centaur. They make their home in the Anaran Plains, but one of their tribes also travels around the zone, and you can even help them out as they move from one campsite to another. It can be pretty hectic. Their main activity, though, they're called Grand Hunts, and hunts go on all the time in a certain location. If you're in the mood for a grind, or if you just feel like standing in the shoes or the hooves of the Centaur, you can hang with them pretty much all day, doing nothing but hunts for chances at rare drops and reputation and more. Another faction, the Dragon Scale Expedition, lets you earn extra rep by flying around and finding random junk in the ground, lost satchels or hidden treasure chests. So there's a lot of traveling, there's exploration, there's random encounters, and sometimes distractions like, oh hey, might as well do that hunt that's nearby. There are numerous factions out there and activities that you can do on your own or with groups or with really big groups. When you're done for the day, just haul your loot back to Valdrakken to maybe sell in the auction house or give to your guildmates. People interested in professions, they've made it their thing all day to be trade barkers, offering their hard-earned expertise and availability for gold. It's pretty old school and how unrefined it is, but it's also admittedly a very social, a very old school MMO thing. It's a big playground for people who want to live out in the Dragon Isles, but also for Big 3 players who want to do more on an off night or they just want to flex. It's not just about rep grinds and gathering stuff either. There are rares, elite areas that'll turn you into hamburger meat. There's a ton of gear that drops out in the open world to help you not just survive, but thrive. Awesome recipes that can generate tons and tons of gold that Big 3 players don't need to farm out for themselves, but they would love for you to do it and to give you money for it. There's gear that you can grind out that has its own special set bonus that can be turned into class set gear as well. And here's what's really cool, as if I wasn't being enough of an unpaid Dragonflight commercial. We're not even done with this first tier or season or whatever you want to call it. We're not done with it yet, so there's still more coming. Now it's not out yet, but in an upcoming minor patch, we'll be revisiting the Drakthir starting zone, only now it's going to be a zone for max level content. What the WoW team has done in the past is put down a feature and try to stretch it out, make it space out for a while through like weekly time gates. And it seems like the WoW team these days is laying down more stuff as the season goes along instead. It gives a different feeling of, oh, here's something new, as opposed to, okay, we finally grinded our way to the Forbidden Reach zone. It's kind of the same thing, but the approach is different. I think it feels a bit more natural. This opening salvo that is Dragonflight Season 1 is so far the best that the WoW team has done. Now I admit, I said the same thing about Shadowlands, but this coming from me personally, I did like the grinding of Covenant progression, and I did like Torghast more than I did like doing islands and Azerite stuff in Battle for Azeroth. Whatever the case though, you don't gotta take my word for it, but I feel like if Dragonflight was just a standalone game and not an expansion that we gotta level up towards, it'd be doing a pretty good job of keeping my attention with all the different ways to experience it. Nothing lasts, of course. Eventually, like, the reps get maxed, you get all the transmog, the milestones are all achieved, and it's time to quit until the next season, and you know what, that's okay. It's been okay. I'm good with this, as opposed to like making sure that I needed to get more soul ash just in case. So those are my takes, and I bet you're gonna find all sorts of opposing viewpoints down in the comments, so dive on in. Like the video, share it with others who are asking if they should check this expansion out, subscribe, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.